Well, hey, as you join us, I would love for you to self-reflect. Have you ever felt you've ever been in a situation where you needed to project a certain image that was not something that you could actually do, but more like a performance where you had to curate the image more so than your actual activity? And that's really the theme that we're getting into today as we get into our sermon session. So welcome. We are going through the book of Acts, and we get to Acts chapter 5, verses 1 through 11 or something. It's Ananias and Sapphira. And you were saying right before we joined how you had forgotten that story finds its context in a bigger narrative. You want to
Absolutely.
say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, that story has always just kind of haunted me, and you just kind of like, if you want to just skip it in Acts, right? You're just like, and that didn't happen.
And what was it that happened in case people
Well,
didn't
so
see it?
Ananias and
I'll let you tell the
Sapphira
story.
show up, and they've pretended that they've sold this piece of land and giving all the money 100% to Paul or Peter, is that right?
Yep.
And the husband comes first, right? And he says, hey, we made all this money. They lay it at the apostles' feet. And then Peter basically interrogates him and is like, is that really all that you made? And it's this whole big thing. And this lie gets kind of come into the light that he didn't actually put all the money down, and he just drops dead. And then it's 3 hours later, his wife comes in, tells the same narrative, and she also drops dead. And it's just like a very fear of the Lord haunting kind of like, doesn't that belong in the Old Testament? Why are we here? But I think I really loved how you brought context to just a couple chapters before. God had been growing the Acts community in generosity and in living selflessly and giving above and beyond what you had, like really giving, I think, testing your limits in generosity. And so they were coming into a culture where people had been selflessly giving and actually giving the amount that they were saying they were giving, and it was costing them something. And there's a couple that comes in and goes, oh, I want to be just as respected as those other members. And so that's kind of where I didn't see that connection until you shared it on Sunday. So thank you.
Yeah, and in the sermon I said it's not about money. Like the whole point of this is not about money. It's about the motive.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rebecca, why is motive so important?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons why it's important, but one of them is it's kind of usually a hidden thing, right? We don't know people's motives. Usually we're not so upfront with our motives, or we can kind of wonder about somebody's motives, but it's like, what is the heart behind it? The heart. And I think, like you pointed out, it's like, it wasn't that they were supposed to give 100%. Like God didn't say like, you've got to give it all, but you lied about what you gave because you wanted to appear just like really super generous, super spiritual or whatever. And I think that we have that temptation in maybe different ways in our lives. Maybe it's not with money, but with something else, to lay out a certain version of ourselves that we want people to think that we are. And I think we all have maybe different ways of dealing with that. And I think I'll just dive in to say that as a leader, well, here I go. As a leader, I think in the church, there can be this temptation to appear like we have it all together. And we don't struggle, or we don't have, lapses in faith or have moments of doubt. And I think because there hasn't really been a lot of grace for leaders sometimes to show that vulnerability. We don't have a culture that's like, oh yeah, we want our pastors to be vulnerable with their struggles. So I think the heart would be, I'm a human being, I'm flawed, I'm broken, but my motivation is to love and serve God, right? And those aren't opposing things.
So the permission to say, I'm so sorry I haven't followed up like I said I would, versus like, well, I called you, I left a voicemail, you didn't get it?
Right.
False motive.
I mean, I left you a voicemail, and let's say
Did my thing check, like
totally.
break it up. Yeah.
Well, and also I think you bring up a good point in the sermon too. It isn't about having weaknesses, right? It's not that like we can still be leaders and still have weaknesses, areas of growth, shadows, but it's like the lying about it. It's the like, no, nothing's wrong here, And I think about like Brennan Manning's book, Abba's Child, which is one of my favorite all-time books. But he says like God meets you where you are, not where you want to be. So when you construct this false self of like, this is who I am, that's actually not a place of connection and community. You can't move forward with people relationally until you drop the mask and are who you are,
Well, it wasn't part of the sermon, but Reuben in the 11 o'clock service used a line that you're only as sick as your secrets. What a powerful phrase.
Yeah.
And John, how have you helped others in your ministry, in your leadership, in your coaching, uncover the secret parts of their lives that maybe are the toxic areas that are eating away, and they're not even aware of it?
People, I heard this statement last year: only when compassion is present will people feel safe enough to reveal themselves. or look at the truth. Only when compassion's present. So that, to me, states how I show up with people. Is compassion in the room? Are they experiencing that? And then especially when there's shame involved, people won't be able to come out into the light if there's shame in the mix, because shame keeps us small, keeps us shrunken, keeps us hidden. So I think if compassion is present and then safety is present, then people can feel like, okay, I can tell you my secret, and I'm going to hold the secret with you, and I'm not going to shame you with the secret, but we're just going to look at it and see what we can learn from it, and maybe we can grow through this. So safety is pretty massive, and people need to feel safe.
And do you feel like going first as a leader, like being the first one to open up and to share a secret or a vulnerability or weakness, creates that safe space rather than
Yeah, I think so.
kind of from on high telling people you shouldn't keep secrets,
Well, I
you
think
shouldn't hide your weaknesses.
and people can feel it when they're in your presence.
Yeah.
They feel it. They know whether it's safe to share this with you or not.
There's a saying from Henry Cloud, I believe, that he kind of defines a safe person as somebody who's confrontable. Right? Like, are you
Yeah.
are you confrontable? It's like,
Right.
I really hope so. Like, I hope I can be, obviously if somebody comes at you, guns blazing, and is like accusing, you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like,
Right.
but I think that that's a really good indicator of like, am I safe enough to be confronted on something? And it makes me think with Ananias and Sapphira, what if, and I'm not, if they felt safe in that moment to be like, oh, we messed up, and to be like, we didn't. And like they told the truth,
Right.
it would have been a totally different story. They would have hopefully received some kind of grace, right? They're confessing their sins, and then there's a forgiveness and like a repairing going on. But I'm like, they probably didn't feel safe in that moment. And that's not a finger point at Peter or whatever. He did come guns blazing. Like he was like, hey, But I just wonder what it could have looked like if there would have
A
been
lot
a
of what if
moment
questions in that.
of
for
like,
sure.
It is, yeah.
what, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe they wouldn't have dropped dead. I don't know. Like we were saying, was it a heart attack? Because the text doesn't say.
Doesn't explicitly say the Lord struck them down.
So we don't know physically what that reaction was like to be
Yes.
called out publicly.
Yeah.
They were like overwhelmed physically, whatever happened. But who knows? But I wonder what that could have looked like for them to feel safe, to confess, to then, I don't know, restore
Well,
something.
and it's interesting because from what I understand, I could be wrong, but it wasn't like a public shaming. It was a private shaming. It was just Peter and them, right? And so they're even in the secret place where no one else is looking, they can't even own it. And that I think is maybe something to also discuss. Like this wasn't like, it wasn't unsafe. They weren't just like
In front of 5,000
yeah,
people.
they weren't in front of the assembly. Like
I don't know that they weren't though.
Okay,
I don't know that
don't
they
know the
weren't in
story.
front
Yeah,
of a
see-
crowd. I mean, just who knows? Who knows?
Right.
I've heard different things,
Yeah.
but I have heard that it was like a group of people witnessing it. I mean, we don't both know. Could have
Right.
been. Probably wasn't like announced from a mountaintop, but I wonder if there were more than just one or two people there.
But it makes a great point that we can find ourselves in private conversations and public settings.
Yeah.
And in all those places, the invitation is to come as you are, to come present, to not perform
Right.
in the presence of God or the presence of others. And, one of the things I even noticed, and I never noticed it before, how in, I think it's Acts 5, verse 1 and 2, there's like this double emphasis about how Ananias, husband, and Sapphira, wife, were on the same page about this. And it's like, and Ananias, with the full knowledge of Sapphira, went and sold, like with permission of his, it was like, it doubles down. It's almost like, why did you include the same detail twice? And I made the comment in the sermon that it's a good reminder that sometimes the closest people in our life can sometimes give us terrible advice. And there can be a temptation to put all of our trust in a person and wrongly put that person, whether it's a parent or a spouse or a roommate or a friend, at the position that only God should be, and taking their advice as gospel. But they were both convinced, but they were convinced to do the complete opposite thing that God wanted them to do. How do you manage that as people who are in relationship with other people whom you love? Like, even the closest people in your life. I mean, we were talking about a mentor of mine, and I said, they're one voice among many voices, and I give them a lot of weight, but they don't have more weight than the Lord does. Like, how do you navigate that in human relationship and in your relationship with God?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is testing it against the person I know of Jesus, right? Like
Mhm.
Jesus's words, his life, his ministry. And if it doesn't feel congruent with that, if it's like in conflict somehow with who I know Jesus to be, then I'm going to be like, we got to check this. So that's the first like litmus test for
Mhm.
me. If I can't see this through the lens of Jesus, then we got a problem.
Yeah.
And I have to think about that for myself too.
Sure.
Any
Right.
advice I'm giving, right?
Right.
Like that kind of moment of self-reflection, like, is this good advice? Like, I don't
Totally.
know.
Okay. Well, I think for me, like two things play out. One is making sure you have people. I have like a board of directors for my life. Like they know everything. And in that group of people, I have people who will confront me. Like I've put them there and they have. And so making sure that we don't surround ourselves with yes men. Like we want to have no people. If you're never hearing no, something is
Totally.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the second thing is, I feel like God is so gracious. He always repeats himself. Like when he's working on something in my character, I will hear it from three people. Like and be like, wait a minute. Like this is not just one person giving me feedback. So sometimes like when I get feedback from somebody and I'm kind of like, is that the Lord or is that really? I'll go to somebody else and go, hey, you seeing this in my life? Like, are you seeing this in my life? Because if multiple witnesses are seeing it, it's like the testimony of two, right? Like if multiple people are experiencing the same thing from me, then it's most likely me. Like I'm the problem, Like, but if it's not like recurring, because I've had people, especially in pastoral ministry, accuse me of things that are completely off the collar. And I knew in the moment they just were wounded or angry or whatever, or not seeing the situation fully, but being like, wow, no one's ever said that to me. Like I've never had that performance review in my life. So that's kind of how I gauge those conversations.
To have safe enough people,
Right.
right?
Yes.
It goes
Board of
back to that. It's like
directors,
to have
that's
safe
great.
people to speak
Yeah,
into
pick
your
your
life.
people,
So
you know?
good.
At the end of that pericope, which is a fancy word for
Great
a
word.
section of scripture, it says, and they were all filled with fear. But I made the comment that this is not terrified, running, hiding from God, filled with shame, not oppressed by God, but like the ancient church historians use the phrase the phobos theos, the fear of the Lord. And it's like the Isaiah moment in Isaiah 6, woe is me, I'm a man of unclean lips. Or the disciples like, who is this that causes that even the wind and waves obey his voice? And so there's this healthy, even Proverbs, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Help unpack a healthy fear of the Lord in your personal experience. Like, is there a story or an experience where you were just like, wow, God, you are God, and filled with wonder and awe and moved? Can you think of anything? Because I've got something that I'll save.
Why don't you start and then we'll simmer.
So and people who know me know that I connect a lot with God in nature. And that's so helpful, I think, to remind ourselves that we don't worship nature, but God is the one who alone we worship. And Scripture says that the heavens declare the glory of God. And he reveals himself through nature. And so God's characteristics and invisible attributes can be made known, as it says in Romans 1, through the visible creation. So when I'm on the edge of the Grand Canyon, when I'm out surfing and the waves are way too big for what I should be surfing on, it kind of puts me in this profound respect where I don't want to take it lightly. So like I have these moments on the edge of the Grand Canyon or on a ridge line where I'm like, I have to be very, very careful. I can't be nonchalant about this. And then it reminds me of like, oh yeah, that's a sliver of how powerful and wonderful and awesome God is. Like I don't want to take God and his invitation to be part of his family lightly. Like I need to move with humility, I can't be flippant about it. And so it's always nature that like reminds me of who God is. And that's where I ended the sermon with, in the 11 o'clock at least, the God's response to Job, because he's basically saying like, consider the heavens and the snow and light and the mountains and water. Like that's a reflection of who I am. Fear of the Lord. How do you unpack that?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things come to mind. One, in experiencing the fear of the Lord, I've spent a lot of time in refugee camps, and Just like meeting Christians from the persecuted church puts the fear of the Lord in you, because we in the West think that we're persecuted and we have our levels of things. But then you meet stories of just the most unoffended people blessing their enemies and just, going for it. That fear of the Lord of like, Lord, do I really do I really see the cost of this, like the cost of knowing you? And these people do. And they're not complaining that they lost everything to follow Jesus, and yet they're so joyful and they're so full of life. And I mean, I don't think we have to get into like a martyr complex, but I think there's a fear of the Lord there of just in our walking in our faith of like, is our faith costing us something? Because it should, and not out of like self-flagellance, but our faith through Acts, we see it like it costs them something every single time. And that's, I think, the fear of the Lord for me.
Does it help to make it synonymous with like the awe of the Lord? Because fear in our culture has such a strong connotation with negative, bad. I'm terrified. So awe of the
I'm
Lord.
glad you're pointing that out, because I definitely kind of grew up more with that theology of like the fear of the Lord in that way of like be afraid. And so it kind of had to come to the other side. But it's like we've talked about before, we want the pendulum to swing, and it's like, no, it's both. It's the complexity of both, of the awe and the intimacy, right? Of the unknown and the mystery, and then the closeness, right? And the coming of God. So I feel like, I mean, this is something that's really hard. And I'm with you. Like, I definitely feel an awe in nature. Like, that is by far the time when I feel the most, I'm so small and you are so big, and I know in part, just that humility of like the Isaiah text, like, whoa.
Not to beat yourself up,
but to be like,
wow.
whoa. Because then I think about it in terms also of a father who's good, right? And if God looks at God's people, God's children, like a father would, I'm not going to be afraid of my dad. I'm not going to be like, oh no, dad's coming. Like, it's like, I'm going to know. And even though, like, even from a child's perspective, there's such a limited understanding of like that figure, like our brains, we're still perpetually children. Like our brains don't understand, grasp God. But at the most sure way we can understand him though, is as that loving parent that is always drawing us to himself in our fears, in our wanderings, in our failings, and even our motives that are wrong. It's like God is inviting us to come. And I think that in and of itself brings awe to me. Right. The love and the image of God in that way as a parent who is so safe, right? The safest.
And infinite in that goodness, right? Looking up at the stars.
Like, isn't that's how can you be that good?
But it's not
that powerful. Like all of it coming together is like, how can this be?
That kind of fear is always met with a graciousness. I don't jump into something where I'm terrified or I'm afraid to admit something about myself, only to be met with loving eyes. Once I admit it, right, and I stop performing, back to the performance piece. I just show up. Okay, I've been playing around. I've been performing. This isn't me. And I'm not met with any condemnation. I'm not met with rejection. I'm just met with like, well, welcome home. It's good to have you back. The porch light's always been on waiting for you. And now you're here. And I'm so glad it would come inside and have a meal with me. That's my understanding of God and fear.
And it's so beautiful how frequently it says, fear not, fear not, fear not. And how frequently Jesus says, fear not, fear not.
Yeah, and I think just add on all that, I think it's just respect. Like really seeing God for who he is, and there he will share his glory with no one else, and I think when we jump into the limelight and we try to take it's like we get the love, right? We're the beloved. Like that's the offer. Like you get to be the beloved, I get to be God. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good.
But but when we like Ananias and Sapphira are looking for our own glory, we end up losing everything, And I think that's just maybe the parable of it, the what's the word? It's the parable of the whole situation. If you just were to take it all away, all the weird details. It's just when you try to step in to be the center of attention and not truly be like what you're saying you are, you will lose everything,
So what's one practice that you could recommend those listening to move more into a present before the Lord and out of a performance before the Lord and others' minds? Any practices, tangible, ground level?
I think one thing I'll say is that I think a lot of people are afraid, to be honest. And I think that's a really legitimate, for a lot of reasons. Maybe being seen was not super welcomed in your family. But I would say, look around your life and ask the Lord for who is one person that I can just share a little bit more than I've ever shared with. And Lord, who's a safe person? Like help me have eyes to scan and just share like just as much as like just to push your window of tolerance just a little bit, and just sit with that. Like and just take the baby steps towards being vulnerable, because I don't think we have to just like spread it all out unless that's a cathartic thing for you, But like I would just say look for a safe person and share as much as you can in that one sitting.
Love that.
That's so good. I'm just going to kind of piggyback on that, because it's like so first I would say examination,
Yeah.
to precede that. It's like, search me, O God, and know me.
Mm-hmm.
See if there's any offensive way in me, because there is. So let me know what it is. Like take that moment and I love the prayer of examine for that. Just a daily prayer of examine. Like, God, where did I miss you today? Where did I see you? But where did I miss you? And then to go, okay, show me somebody who's safe, who I can kind of be a little bit vulnerable with, like dip my toe in the water. Because like we're so afraid to trust people. And I get it, right? We have a very judgmental culture. We haven't cultivated safety. But I'm like, you're becoming a safe person to me, Erica Faye. You know what I mean? Like we're kind of trusting each other. And it's like, oh, I see a kindred spirit, So I feel like just, I don't know, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Oh, Rebecca. But yeah, so it's like that first moment of examining and then saying like, who is safe? Who is safe to bring into my story in a little bit deeper of way? And I think it's like you said, it brings life, like that kind of practice is healing and life-giving. And that's what God is all about. When we keep things in the dark, right? The Reuben thing of like the secrets that they're toxic, but bringing things out to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you journey with me and pray with me?
Totally.
And like bear my burden with me, Like that's huge. Pick one person. Yeah,
So
I love
beautiful.
that.
You too.
We have a friendship.
I mean,
It's good.
Clearly.
That's good.
Please, sister.
Yeah, I can feel that. I had a moment. I was doing the dishes last night, and my wife confronted me on something. And I hate it when she confronts me. She's so...
Because she's right.
Yeah, she's so intuitive. And it was that moment of being confronted with something where you have that decisive moment of, I could tell the truth or cover it up. And I chose just to tell the truth, and she received it so well. But it was I think it's just a moment by moment choice of that posturing of like, when I'm presented with the opportunity to be my authentic self and to show up, am I going to do it? And I think it starts in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So, because God in his grace is going to give you an opportunity to do it.
Absolutely.
And then it shows up in your home while you're doing your dishes.
Right. And I love that too, like your wife was a safe person back
Oh, yeah,
to you.
absolutely.
And I think we have to,
Yeah.
if we're going to ask it for other people, we also have to be as generous,
Yeah. And I finished the dishes still.
Yes, you did.
As you did, because you're
fully exposed.
Oh, yeah.
What a fraud.
Let me just finish these. What about you?
So here's a little quick last one before we wrap up. So find somebody and go through this practice together. So we live near the ocean, so we know what low tide looks like, and things get exposed. And then we know what high tide looks like, and things get filled up. And there's something that people don't know. It's called slack tide, which is in between the tides, where things actually kind of become a little bit more still.
Yeah.
So self-reflect on that and say, okay, search me, O Lord, know me. What areas of my life right now are being exposed through this season, through this difficulty, through this, what's being exposed, and just bring that before the person with you. And you can just do that between you and the Lord.
Yeah.
And just sit with that. And then also imagine high tide, right? What areas of my life are being filled and covered and they're just, totally overflowing, right? And sit with that. And then finally, what area of my life, slack tide now, do I just need to be still before you? And just try that. And sometimes I find that when you have something that's like a visual metaphor or a prompt, it's a little easier, at least for me, to be able to open up. So what's my low tide exposure? What's my high tide being covered up? And what do I need to be still? Simple practices.
Okay,
Find
that's
some safe people though, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Love that.
Sermon sessions. subscribe to our YouTube channel because we have so many resources, beyond this.
We do.
And we'd love for you to join us next week. Thank you all. Until next time, God bless you.